strugglingacademics.com.
Hello there, I am Jan B.W. Pedersen, a PhD philosopher situated in Copenhagen, Denmark.
Then Andrasi, fellow struggling academic, PhD in literature and linguistics, occasional philosopher located in Montreal, Canada.
I'm David Clinnick, PhD in archaeology, and I'm here in sunny California.
Hello! So, I'm struggling to make this video. So, I'm an academic and I'm a struggling academic. My name is Tudor.
Today's topic is experts. And I will begin with my personal experience of working with experts, because whenever you have a job at hand, you ask yourself, who should I relate to get it done? And of course, not all the jobs are easy for everybody. So I'm talking about refurbishing my house, taking care of my place, my apartment. And every time I wanted to do it, all my friends were directing me towards a special electrician and mason and so on and so forth. Ended up doing nothing for years on end. So last year I came back and decided I will start doing it myself. And of course I realized I need experts for real. I couldn't master all those skills, but 80% of the work I did myself. And I was really proud because I came across this idea of the obligation to go and look for experts, seek their opinion very much too often. I am not a mason, neither an electrician. I'm basically a teacher. And when I graduated, there was one word on my PhD diploma, which said philology. And that is supposed to be my kind of word that I'll put probably on my tombstone, Tudor the philologist. And that's what I'm supposed. But philology is so huge that it actually covers everything. So when I started thinking of this term, philology, or myself as an expert in philology, that's very far from being a mason or electrician, isn't it? I mean, it definitely is on the opposite poles. I was supposed to learn, and I did learn Latin in university. I failed the exam twice, actually. But right now, Latin is quite a bit of an important part of what I do. Philology is related to the classical world. It started as one of the very first scientific enterprises. I didn't know that. I was a philologist. I didn't know where philology came from. It came before sciences. And classical languages were very important to philology. I was ashamed I failed Latin twice, but I think I know a little bit right now. Enough to save me for a few good words. But at the end of the day, if I'm a philologist as an expert, what is this domain I'm in? Because I come across many professors who don't read, who have their titles in academia and don't do anything else than teach, and that's it. Keep to their very narrow track. So I think that my expertise is in a very wide umbrella kind of discipline, so wide that I can't introduce myself right now as philologist. People back in Singapore, where I used to work, were asking me, what's a philologist? I mean, it's like a 19th century teacher, right? And I was saying, yes, it's kind of correct, but that's part of my refusal to be an expert in anything. I know that the society is thirsty about guaranteed knowledge, but guaranteed knowledge is relative. All the electricians and the masons that I hired had a limited amount of knowledge, a mastery. I checked. They were wrong all the time, and they were experts in their fields. Ask a professor of, let's say, English. I mean, take him to a real exam of his field, and you'll notice he'll probably fail miserably if you really put him to or her to test. So my idea of experts and my idea of being an expert is very far to very far from what was defined in the 19th century, and we are still in the same field right now. As expert is a person who went to university, followed it through, got a very good mark, and for 40, 50 years worked in the same field, adding up to his knowledge all the time. Right now, we live in a world where experts are sometimes brought up in like 2 weeks and surpassing those that are years in a field. So expertise right now is very, very flimsy and uncertain. And I want to ask you what you feel that you're expert in, because I'm expert in philology, which is very much like everything. So what are you experts in? What's your expertise?
Thank you, Tudor, for a very difficult question. Now I'm the moderator today, so of course I'm not going to put myself on the spot immediately to save my own behind, so to speak. But I'm not totally cruel as well, so I will ask David and Diana here if one of you is willing to take the first step in terms of answering Tudor's question.
I don't have an answer to this questions this question, what are you an expert in, right away, but probably I will be able to articulate it together. Yeah, it's a teamwork, I guess. I will start with a very weird story that I stumbled over. It's and don't judge me too harsh for this. It's about Stephen King. In a recent reprint of a very big novel called The Stand, the recent republish has a second introduction. And the second introduction, in this second introduction, Stephen King brings to attention the detail of the breadcrumbs in the other story, Hansel and Gretel. As you very know well, two kids have been brought into the woods and they left behind some breadcrumbs in order to retrace their way back home. Not essential to the main plot of the story in Hansel and Gretel, these breadcrumbs make the story thicker and they give it a deeper meaning. They are traces of knowledge, lost knowledge, eaten by birds' knowledge, if we can say it this way. And these breadcrumbs leads them into the darkness of the unknown, and they get back to their home, to the homey place, to what's comfortable, what's known as their home, as opposed to, I would say, uncanny, if I would like to use the Freud language. So what's the relation between Hansel and Gretel and the breadcrumbs and Stephen King? So the second reprint, in the first reprint, Stephen King has been asked by the accounting department to cut off his novel about 400 pages. 400 pages, which is probably too little other novels within 400 pages. So the edition from 78 or 75, I don't remember exactly, has about 900 pages. The second edition, second publishing of the novel, has about 13,000 pages. I measured it, and it is bigger in size than a modular brick, standard brick, and it's heavier than my Bible. That's not the point. The fact that it's very thick and it's very big, and he had been asked to cut out that much from his novel. The question is the thought was, as Hansel and Gretel had to go back for their breadcrumbs, and Stephen King had to do this editorial surgery to his own novel in order to find probably a better novel with the second republishing. Probably we should look into this little detail that it's called by Stephen King himself, great and magical bits of storytelling, but I would paraphrase it a little bit, and I would call it great and magical bits of thought, of knowledge, of human knowledge in the end. And I would bring it back to the idea of experts in modern society. Keep in mind for a little bit the story of Hansel and Gretel, and think in terms of what makes us or somebody else experts. Because expert, yeah, okay, it's someone who went to university, who had a certain knowledge. I could be an expert in red shoes, for example. What makes me an expert? The fact that I have a huge collection of red shoes, or that I'm a curator at the shoe museum in Toronto, which, by the way, it's absolutely amazing. It's one of the most interesting museums in the world, and they have a exhibition that it's recent. Okay, I put the title down. It's called The Great Divide, Footwear in the Age of Enlightenment. So for anybody amazed in looking at 18th century products, this is the place. Just, I invite you guys to Toronto. Let's look at the shoes from the 18, 19, probably 17th century. I don't know exactly the origin of all the exhibits. So yeah, what makes me an expert? Again, the question, what makes me an expert in red shoes or in Stephen King? Is the fact that I have a collection, or that I read all the books by Stephen King? No, what makes me an expert, it's probably that term that is a little bit weird. It's called expertness. It's a badge that the society gives me and brands me as someone known for knowing certain things within a certain domain. But if we go back to, I don't know, Jan, how many minutes I went through, but I want to talk to you about, guys, about something that Tudor mentioned it, and it's very interesting about the Latin origin. Of course, expert has Latin origin, and of course comes from a verb that means going through in and going throughout. And if we go back to Hansel and Gretel, this is exactly what an expert does, what Hansel and Gretel did in the story: go through the darkness of a forest to get back to something that is comfortable by picking up bits and bits of knowledge or of something that they left behind in order to trace back the broader bubble of knowledge. I don't know if the word it's correct, broader bubble of knowledge, but anyways. So the word in Latin, the verb form is experior. Experior, which is made out, you know very well, made of ex, which means out, and perior, which is a very strange old Indo-European root. It's not attested. We don't know exactly what was that word and how exactly it was put, but the assumption is that it was an old Indo-European root, meaning going through an event or a thing. In Latin as well, we have, at that time, so I'm talking about classical Latin, we had the participle form of experior as being expertus sum, which is the participle form given by all the dictionaries. So look at this form, expertus sum. So even embedded in the original verbal form of the word, we have the idea of an expert. Being an expert, being through something that deeply that you are able to take over all the bits and pieces of that certain domain or knowledge field. So obviously,
Gianna, can I
yeah,
just stop you there, because
just stop me,
I'm
please.
sorry. I had this idea that, and it should actually be David who's going to be talking very soon here. But the idea of going through something reminds me of, Plato and the idea of getting your behind out of the cave and you see the sun and you come back with presumably knowledge. So that's sort of the same movement, if you will. You don't go through the forest, but you definitely go through a certain amount of darkness, and you realize that you're in the darkness, and you see the sun, and then you are somehow enlightened. But enough of me. Let's, with your permission, Diana, I like to give the word or the talking time to David.
Well, So, not to undermine anything that you guys have said, I do like this etymology of the word and what Jan's brought in for this idea of this relationship between expertise is going through something, the analogy of the cave and coming out perhaps on the other end with some greater knowledge of the universals and of how the universe really is and really functions. And there's something that Diana said, which is this idea within the Hansel and Gretel narrative of coming out to something that's comfortable, something that's familiar, something that's homely, right? I think is what you said. And I do think that's one of the reasons why as a society, we search for experts, right? I think a lot of times we have this idea, and we all do, right? It's like Tudor needs to have his old ancient castle re-roofed, right? You're going to sleep better at night if you think you have some expert, roofer redoing your roof rather than you doing it, right? If you're doing it, you're going to have all this anxiety about it. You might stay up all night when it's raining thinking it's going to leak here and there and all of this stuff. But I do think there's something more profound than just that kind of incidentals to our own life, but actually as a society, particularly right now with our reliance or desire for experts, right? I think something that Tudor touched on is this goes hand in hand with specialization in university. I think it only gets to this idea that we have kind of put things into more precise scientific domains, right? There is going to be a right answer for certain things. We have experts that have gone through this filtering process. The university, now they have these different licenses and all of this expectation and so forth. And that is a person we're going to go to give us these little nuggets, little bits of knowledge. And they're not bits of knowledge for us to really grapple with and look at. They're for us to accept as definitely being true, right? As if, like Jan said, someone's come through the cave, they grabbed the true image of the form and brought it back to us in some extent, right? And that's, I think, what we expect. I think that's how a lot of us engage with other fields. I know for myself, I'm supposed to be an archaeologist, although I'm hesitant to call myself an expert even in my own field. But I know that when I engage with other fields, and that's why I love talking to you guys, I rely on your expertise, right? And there's a certain amount of acceptance, right? There's a certain amount or extent to which I need to believe what you're telling me as being true in order for me to try to rely on it or even actualize it in my own thought processes, right? And what I fear is that through that process, as we become more and more specialized, as we as a society demand more and more experts, and particularly licensed and certified experts, so they're going to be brought out on TV and talk to us on the radio and so forth, that some of these things that Diana said before, like these, what do you call them? Like these you call them golden bits of knowledge or whatever they may be, that those get lost, right? If we look at my own field, I'm sure it's true for all of you. I love when I hear stuff like my interest has been in human origins for the most part, how other archaic humans relate to us and so forth. And I get told a very short narrative of this is what paleoanthropologists and Paleolithic archaeologists, this is the consensus of how we think humans evolved. And this is why they believe this is important. And what I would say is that, there's a huge diversity of opinion in these things within one given field, right? And that when experts are, and I know that just in my thing, which is so, in many ways, inconsequential to our day-to-day lives, that those experts that are brought out are only speaking one aspect, and they can say it with such confidence to the public or to other fields, so even other academics, but in other fields, with such a degree of confidence that they wouldn't dare say in a conference in our own specialized field, right? Because they kind of know they're going to go unchallenged. And I'll from there hand over
Tudor
to
has a comment, I
yeah,
think, David.
yeah.
Oh yeah. Now, I definitely like Diana's breadcrumbs analogy, and also David's idea of multiple subfields and no subdefinition are always in conflict in every domain. Now, when I started talking about philology, I was defining it as a broad discipline that it doesn't really exist today, and is in essence a collection of real domains. I mean, archaeology was part of philology as well. Ian's philosophy was very early part of philology. I mean, it started from the linguistics. That was also in philology at the beginning, although it was defined later on. But the science of analyzing texts, that was philology at the beginning. That's the mother of us all. And I was trying to say, I have this word on my diploma. I'm not worthy of it. And it's not really a field because it's bits and pieces of information from different domains. And most of it are lost in time. You can't put it together and make sense of philology. That's what I wanted to say. But when David was talking about modern society and the kind of struggle, but not struggle, fight between experts, I wanted to say that expertise is defined by what it is not. The expertise is not the lack of knowledge. So when I say I'm an expert in, for example, history of food, which I, by the way, used to teach, and might still teach even after, that means that I'm an anthropologist of food, which doesn't really exist, the term in academia. And whenever I have students, they ask me, well, you probably know everything about all the plants. And in my madness, I started reading about all the edible plants. And it took me like 3 months to realize it was impossible. I couldn't cover it. It's like teaching history of Europe. You cannot teach it in 3 months, but you can. Actually, you can be an expert and not master the entire field at all. So this is the kind of conundrum, should I say? The paradox is that an expert is a person, for me, who's courageous enough to show whenever his knowledge ends. That's, for me, very important. An expert knows exactly what he can master. He's not a person who knows everything about the domain. Yeah, that's full stop for me, sir.
Right. Can I answer the question also, even though I'm moderator? Thank you. So I am now. I've been so fortunate that I've been listening to you guys, so I can avoid sounding as foolish as I would if I started off. But I think speaking as a philosopher, I think one of the first things you learn when you walk into the woods, when you enter university, is that there's just so much to learn. And you would be fooling yourself if you think that after, say, 7-8 years or something, that you will master everything. Even in the little field that I represent, it's divided into disciplines. So you have metaphysics, you have epistemology, you have ethics, you have logic. And there are subdivisions as well. Even, Tudor, I know you want expertise in terms of how to prevent vampires from crawling into your house at night, given where you live. But Abraham Van Helsing in Dracula's novel was, he was a medical doctor, but he was also very skilled in metaphysics. And that's why he could help all those people in the novel. But who can master so many different fields? Even the medical field today is filled up with small silos of expertise. So if you are at the end of your medical education, well, you have just learned the basics, and that's where you start. So it's kind of like the road continues, and then now you have to choose which way you want to go, and then you're sort of putting all the other ways you could walk behind you. And that in itself is like a tremendous loss if you want absolute knowledge of everything, which is just something we cannot achieve. Another thing with relation to myself, I mean, I'm as reluctant to call myself an expert as David and I presume Diana is. And it's because what I specialize in is it's ridiculous to call me an expert in that. So I specialize in wonder and what that is. And I specialize in human flourishing. But to call me an expert in wonder would like calling me an expert in life. And I mean, there is no such a thing. It doesn't exist. Everyone is an expert in their own lives. I might have a few things to say about the universals, as David was kind enough to bring on the table. But even that we can discuss, because what are particulars and what are universals? So it's a very, very difficult thing. I am very much in agreement with both Diana and David that society wants experts to be some authority that comes and can just fix everything. And that kind of like hunkers back to your need of the electrician that comes and fix everything in your house, no questions asked. And that's probably the persona the person will come with. I can fix everything and you don't need to think at all. But then usually after a couple of weeks, you figure out it doesn't really work in the way you want it. And then what happens to your idea of the expert? It kind of begins to crumble a little. And I think, to round everything up, being an expert is very much like you say, Tutor. It's also realizing that within yourself and within your field, you don't know everything. There is a lot of darkness still to be explored. And just to be a little irritating here on my outgoing words, I think we can make a distinction. You can start off as a novice, you can become competent to a certain level, you can end up as an expert, but maybe there is a level called mastery that's even higher. And then if you're an Aristotelian like I am, you can talk about the development of practical wisdom as something you gain with age. That was my piece.
Thank you very much. And that concludes our meeting here. And next time.
Until next time, for sure. Thank you, guys.
Next time, vampires and werewolves. No.
Cut.
StrugglingAcademics.com